I spent 9 years calling my only son every Sunday at 6 p.m. 9 years of voicemails he never returned. 9 years of Christmas cards stamped "Return to Sender." 9 years of driving 4 hours to stand on his doorstep while his wife told me he wasn't home even though his truck sat right there in the driveway. Then one afternoon, a phone call came. Not from my son, but from his wife. She said they needed me at a family dinner. Something important. I thought maybe he was finally ready to talk. I was dead wrong. At that dinner table, surrounded by people I'd never met, they asked me for something that made my blood run cold. I stood up, walked out, and vanished from the face of the earth. I'm glad you're here. Drop a comment and tell me where you watching from and what time is it where you are. My name was Harold Dawson. I say was because that man doesn't exist anymore. But I'll get to that. I lived in a 2-bedroom house in Dayton, Ohio. Same house for 38 years. Bought it with my wife, Ruth, back when we were both working at the GM plant on Needmore Road. $42,000 in 1986. Doesn't sound like much now, but it was everything we had. Ruth died 11 years ago. Ovarian cancer. She was 58. The last thing she said to me, the very last words out of her mouth, was, "Don't let our boy forget where he came from, Harold. Keep him close." I held her hand until it went cold, and I promised. Our son Derek was 31 when Ruth passed. He'd already been pulling away by then, slowly, like a tide going out so gradually you don't notice until the beach is dry. He married Victoria 2 years before Ruth got sick. Victoria came from Kenilworth, Illinois. Old money. Her father owned commercial real estate across 3 states. She went to Northwestern. Derek met her at a law school mixer in Chicago. The wedding should have been my first warning. Victoria's family paid for everything. The reception was at the Drake Hotel. Ruth and I sat at a table near the kitchen with Derek's college roommate and an elderly aunt nobody seemed to know. We weren't introduced during the toasts. Victoria's father gave a 7-minute speech about legacy and ambition. Never mentioned Ruth or me once. Ruth squeezed my hand under the table. "It's fine, Harold. It's their day." But it wasn't fine. After Ruth died, Derek called less. Then not at all. He and Victoria moved to Lake Forest, north of Chicago. Big house, country club, private schools for the kids. They had 2 my grandchildren. Ethan, born 3 years after the wedding, and Sophie, 2 years after that. I met Ethan once, at 8 months old. Victoria handed him to me like she was passing a fragile vase to a janitor. I held my grandson for maybe 4 minutes before she took him back. "He's fussy," she said. He wasn't fussy. He was laughing. I never met Sophie, never held her, never heard her voice. For 9 years, I tried. Every birthday, I sent gifts. A wooden train set I built by hand for Ethan's 5th birthday, 40 hours of cutting, sanding, painting. No response. A handmade dollhouse for Sophie's 3rd. I drove to 3 different craft stores to find the miniature furniture. No acknowledgement. I sent checks on Christmas, $200 each. They were never cashed. I kept calling every Sunday. Left messages. "Hey, son. Just your dad. Hope the kids are good. Love you." 47 Sundays a year for 9 years. That's over 400 voicemails into silence. I wasn't a rich man. After GM closed the Dayton plant in 2008, I picked up maintenance work at the VA hospital, $16.50 an hour. I did that until I turned 64, when my knees gave out for good. 2 surgeries, neither one covered completely. Social Security was $1,840 a month. Pension from GM was another $620. My house was paid off, so I managed. Beans and rice some weeks, but I managed. Every morning, I'd wake up at 5:30. Old factory habit. Make coffee in the kitchen. Ruth and I had remodeled ourselves in 2003. She picked the yellow tiles. I'd sit at the table with the phone next to my plate just in case. It never rang. I spent my days walking the neighborhood, talking to Frank next door about his tomatoes, helping Mrs. Chen carry groceries up her steps. Tuesday nights I played cards at the VFW Hall on Salem Avenue. Thursdays I volunteered at the food bank on 3rd Street. Small life. Quiet life. The loneliest part wasn't the silence. It was seeing other people's families. At the grocery store, a man my age with his son, comparing steaks, arguing about charcoal versus gas. At the park, a grandfather pushing a girl on a swing while she screamed, "Higher, Papa, higher." At the food bank, a woman brought her grown daughter to volunteer together. They laughed about burning Thanksgiving turkey. I watched all of it like pressing my face against glass. Then on a Tuesday in March, my phone rang. Not Sunday, Tuesday. The screen said Derek's cell. My heart nearly stopped. I answered so fast I almost dropped it. But it wasn't Derek. It was Victoria. Harold. Not Dad. Never Dad. We're having a dinner this Saturday. Family only. Derek wants you there. I sat down on the edge of my bed. My hands were shaking. Derek wants me there? Yes. It's important. He'll explain when you get here. Dinner at 7. I'll text you the address. She hung up before I could ask anything else. No, how are you? No, sorry it's been so long, just logistics. But Derek wanted me there. That was enough. I spent the next 4 days doing things I hadn't done in years. Got a haircut at Tony's on Wayne Avenue. $18 with tip. Bought a new dress shirt at Kohl's. Blue, button-down, $34 on sale. Pressed my good khakis. Shined my brown shoes, the ones I wore to Ruth's funeral, still holding up. I bought gifts for the grandchildren. A model airplane kit for Ethan, now 12. A set of watercolor paints for Sophie, 9. Wrapped them myself. The way Ruth taught me, fold the corners tight, tape underneath where it doesn't show. I also brought a bottle of wine. Nothing expensive. A Merlot from the shop on Far Hills, $22. The owner said it was good for dinner parties. Saturday morning, I loaded everything into my 2011 Chevy Malibu and started the 5-hour drive from Dayton to Lake Forest. Interstate 70 to 65, then up through Indianapolis toward Chicago. I stopped once for gas outside Lafayette. $47 to fill the tank. I ate a gas station sandwich. $5.49. I wasn't wasting money on a restaurant when dinner was waiting. The GPS brought me through neighborhoods that made Dayton look like a different planet. Houses set back behind iron gates. Lawns the size of football fields. Trees pruned into shapes. I passed a property with a tennis court visible from the road. Their house was a stone colonial at the end of a cul-de-sac. 4-car garage. Landscaping that probably cost more per month than my pension. I parked on the street because the driveway was full. A black Mercedes, a white Range Rover, and 2 other cars I didn't recognize. Family only, Victoria had said. Whose family? I carried the gifts and wine up the flagstone walkway. Rang the doorbell, Victoria answered. Black dress, pearl earrings, makeup like she was going to a gala, not a family dinner. She looked at the wine in my hand the way you'd look at someone bringing a garden hose to a flood. Harold, come in. The foyer had a chandelier and a staircase that curved up to the 2nd floor. Shoes lined up by the door, all expensive, all polished. I looked down at my brown funeral shoes and thought about taking them off. Everyone's in the dining room, Victoria said, already walking ahead. I followed her through a hallway lined with photographs. Derek and Victoria's wedding. The kids at various ages. Vacations, beaches, ski resorts, European cities. Family portraits, professional ones, with everyone in white shirts and khaki, smiling at the camera. I wasn't in a single frame. The dining room was enormous. A table for 12, set with china and crystal glasses, candles everywhere, and seated around it, Victoria's parents, Richard and Catherine, Victoria's brother James with his wife, 2 other couples I didn't know, and at the head of the table, my son. Derek stood when I walked in. He was 42 now, gray at his temples, which startled me. He wore a navy blazer over a collared shirt. He looked like his mother around the eyes. That nearly broke me right there. Dad. He crossed the room and hugged me. Briefly, with one arm, the way you hug a colleague at a conference. Glad you could make it. Of course. My voice cracked. Wouldn't miss it. He didn't introduce me to the other guests. Just gestured to an empty chair at the far end of the table, opposite him. The farthest seat from the head. I sat down, set the gifts on the floor beside me. The wine disappeared into the kitchen without comment. The children weren't there. I looked around. Where are Ethan and Sophie? Upstairs with the babysitter, Victoria said. This is an adult dinner. 9 years since I'd seen my grandchildren, and they were 1 floor above me with a babysitter. Dinner was served by a caterer. 3 courses, salad with ingredients I couldn't name, lamb with some kind of herb crust, a chocolate dessert in a glass. The wine on the table was French. The label probably cost more than the bottle I'd brought. Conversations floated around me. Richard talked about a development in Scottsdale. James discussed his boat. The couples talked about private school admissions. Nobody asked me a single question. Not what I did, not where I lived, not how the drive was. I sat and ate and listened and felt the same invisibility I'd felt at the wedding 15 years ago. After dessert, Derek tapped his glass with a fork. The table quieted. Thank you all for coming tonight. Victoria and I wanted to share some exciting news. He looked at her. She stood and moved beside him, her hand on his shoulder. As many of you know, we've been exploring investment opportunities in senior living. The aging population is the biggest demographic shift in American history, and we intend to be at the forefront. My stomach turned. Something instinctive. The same feeling I got on the factory floor when a machine sounded wrong before it broke. Derek continued. We've identified a premium property in Scottsdale, Arizona. 40 acres. The plan is a luxury assisted living community. Spa, golf, concierge medicine. Richard has committed initial capital, and James is handling the architectural vision. Applause around the table. Richard nodded with the confidence of a man who expected applause. Now, Derek turned toward me. Every head followed. Dad, this is where you come in. The room went silent. Victoria spoke. Harold, we know you sold Ruth's jewelry collection after she passed. My blood went cold. Ruth's jewelry. Her mother's rings, the pearl necklace from our 25th anniversary, the bracelet I saved 6 months to buy her. After she died, I couldn't look at them. They reminded me of hospital rooms and morphine drips. I sold them through an estate dealer 4 years ago. $85,000. I never told anyone. We also know about the life insurance policy, Derek said, and the savings account. They knew everything. The $200,000 life insurance payout from Ruth's policy. The savings I'd built over 38 years, slowly. $50 here, $100 there. Total liquid assets, roughly $340,000. My entire safety net. Every dollar I had in the world besides my house and my monthly checks. Here's what we're proposing. Derek pulled a leather folder from under the table. Documents inside, tabbed with colored flags. An investment of $300,000. You'd be a limited partner. Guaranteed returns within 5 years. And of course, he paused, smiled. The smile didn't reach his eyes. You'd have a permanent unit in the community, free of charge. You'd live there, near us, near Ethan and Sophie. They've been asking about you. 9 years of nothing, and now they've been asking. Victoria added, we thought it would be wonderful to have you close. The children need their grandfather. I looked at the leather folder, at the documents with yellow tabs that said, sign here. At the room full of wealthy people watching the retired factory worker decide whether to hand over his life savings for the privilege of being included in his own family. You'd be investing in your family's future, Richard said from across the table. Smart money, Harold. I looked at my son, my only child, the boy I taught to ride a bike on Smithville Road, the teenager I drove to every baseball game for 4 years straight, the young man whose college I helped pay for by working double shifts until my back gave out. I looked at him and saw a stranger in a blazer, holding a pen, waiting for me to sign away everything his mother and I had spent our lives building. No, the word came out quiet, calm, like closing a door gently. Derek blinked. Dad, I don't think you understand the opportunity. I understand perfectly. My voice didn't waver. You didn't call me for 9 years. You didn't let me see my grandchildren. You didn't return a single voicemail. And now you need $300,000. So suddenly I'm family again. The room was frozen. Victoria's mother looked at her plate. James studied his wine glass. The caterer retreated into the kitchen. This isn't about money, Derek said. This is about bringing the family together. Then why is there a contract on the table? Silence. I stood up, picked up the gifts I'd brought for Ethan and Sophie, tucked them under my arm. These are for my grandchildren. Make sure they get them. I set them on the table, turned toward the door. Dad, wait. Derek followed me into the hallway. His voice dropped low, sharp. If you walk out that door, that's it. Don't expect to see the kids. Don't expect holiday invitations. Don't expect anything. I stopped at the front door, looked at him one last time. Derek, I haven't expected anything from you since your mother's funeral, and you still found a way to disappoint me. I walked to my car. The night air was cold. March in Illinois. I sat behind the wheel for a full minute before starting the engine. My hands were steady. 40 years of steel and machinery had trained them for worse than this. The drive back to Dayton took 5.5 hours. I didn't turn on the radio, didn't stop for coffee. Just drove through the dark, with the highway lines blurring under my headlights, and a decision forming in my mind like concrete setting. I got home after midnight, sat at the kitchen table, Ruth's yellow tiles glowing under the overhead light, pulled out a legal pad and started writing. By morning, I had a plan. Every step, every detail. Monday, called a lawyer. Patricia Vance, office on Main Street. Told her everything. She listened without interrupting, then said, "Mr. Dawson, you have every right to protect yourself. Legal name change, Harold Dawson to Thomas Harold Dawson. Keep the middle, change what matters. New will, Derek removed entirely. Everything to the Dayton Veterans Fund and the food bank on 3rd Street. Sell the house. $138,000. Market was slow, but a young couple offered in 2 weeks. Cash. I took it. Close all bank accounts. Open new ones at a credit union in another state. Transfer everything. No digital footprint. Cancel phone. Buy prepaid. No contract. No records. Delete the Facebook account I'd barely used anyway. Close the email. Open a new one with a name nobody would recognize. I researched towns the way I used to research parts manuals at the factory. Methodical, thorough. I wanted somewhere warm, somewhere near water, somewhere nobody from Dayton or Lake Forest would ever think to look. I found Beaufort, South Carolina. Population 13,000. Historic downtown on the Beaufort River. Spanish moss on live oaks. Affordable, quiet. A place where people moved to start over. I found a small cottage listed at $165,000. 2 bedrooms, screened porch, 3 blocks from the waterfront. I made an offer over the phone. Accepted same day. 6 weeks later, I stood in the Erie County Courthouse. Different name, same man. Judge looked over his glasses. "You understand this is permanent, Mr. Dawson?" "Yes, Your Honor." The gavel came down. Harold Dawson was gone. Thomas Harold Dawson drove south with everything he owned in the back of his Chevy Malibu. Beaufort was nothing like Dayton. The air smelled like salt, marsh, and jasmine. My cottage had a tin roof that rang when it rained, which was often in the afternoons. The screened porch looked out over a garden of azaleas someone had planted decades ago, still blooming every spring like they had something to prove. I fell into a rhythm. Morning coffee on the porch, watching herons wade through the marsh at low tide, walk downtown along Bay Street, past the bookshops and galleries and restaurants that served shrimp and grits for $12. Tuesday mornings at the hardware store, where I started helping the owner, a man named Ray, fix whatever needed fixing. He was 74, Vietnam vet, bad hip, good sense of humor. We didn't ask each other about our pasts. That was the deal. "You handy?" Ray asked my first week. 38 years at GM. Good enough. I fixed shelves, repaired a screen door, rewired a ceiling fan. Word got around. People started calling. "Tom, can you look at my garbage disposal?" "Tom, the deck railing's loose." I didn't charge much. Sometimes nothing. I wasn't doing it for money. I was doing it because it felt good to be useful, to be seen, to hear someone say, "Thanks, Tom. You're a lifesaver." Ray became my closest friend. Thursday evenings, we'd sit on his back porch with bourbon and watch the sun set over the river. He told me about his daughter one night. Haven't heard from her in 6 years. She married some hotshot in Atlanta. Guess I wasn't good enough for the new crowd. I looked at him. Didn't say anything. Didn't have to. He raised his glass. To surviving our own kids. I raised mine. To surviving. 8 months of that peace. Then one afternoon, I came home from Ray's shop and found a certified letter in my mailbox. Return address, Cook County Circuit Court, Chicago, Illinois. I opened it standing in my kitchen, hands steady, gut tight. Derek was suing me. The claims were almost laughable. Emotional abandonment of minor grandchildren. Breach of oral agreement to invest in a family business. Financial elders, self-neglect. They were actually arguing I was incompetent and my assets should be managed by a court-appointed guardian. Their pick, of course. They wanted $300,000 in damages and control of my finances. I sat on the porch reading it twice. 3 times. Then I called Patricia Vance. "It's frivolous," she said. "But you have to show up. If you don't, they win by default. Then I'll show up." The hearing was set for October. I flew to Chicago, rented a car, drove to the Cook County Courthouse in my one good suit and my brown shoes. Derek and Victoria were already inside. He wore a charcoal suit that fit like it was painted on. She sat behind him in the gallery, ankles crossed, face blank. Their attorney, a man named Prescott, had silver hair and the easy confidence of someone billing $600 an hour. Patricia sat beside me, calm, organized, folder thick with evidence. Judge Carolyn Mitchell entered at 9 a.m. Sharp eyes, no patience for nonsense. Prescott went first, painted a picture of a disturbed elderly man who fled his family, changed his name, and abandoned his grandchildren out of spite. "My clients have suffered immensely," he said. "The children ask for their grandfather daily." Patricia rose for cross-examination. She called Derek to the stand. "Mr. Dawson, excuse me. Mr. Sullivan, when was the last time you called your father before the dinner invitation?" Derek shifted. "I don't recall specifically." Patricia placed a stack of phone records on the judge's bench. "These are your father's phone records. 9 years of outgoing calls to your number. 412 voicemails. 0 incoming calls from you." She let that settle, then produced another folder. "These are screenshots of text messages, birthday wishes, holiday greetings, photos of gifts he built by hand for your children, a wooden train set, a dollhouse, all unanswered." She placed receipts beside them. Gift receipts totaling over $4,000 across 9 years. None acknowledged. She looked at Derek. "Did you ever once thank your father for any of these? I was going through a difficult... Yes or no?" "No." "Did you return a single phone call in 9 years?" "No." "Did you allow your father to meet his granddaughter, Sophie?" The timing was never. "Yes or no?" "No." Patricia turned to the judge. "Your Honor, I'd also like to enter evidence regarding the dinner in question." She produced a copy of the investment documents. These were presented to Mr. Dawson, now Mr. Thomas Dawson, at a dinner he was told was a family reunion. He was asked to invest $300,000, his entire life savings, into a real estate venture. When he declined, his son threatened to permanently cut off contact with his grandchildren. She placed one more document on the bench, and this is a report showing that the plaintiff hired a private investigator to locate Mr. Dawson after he relocated. They tracked his name change, his new address, and his financial accounts. Judge Mitchell studied the papers. Her expression hardened. Patricia called me to the stand. I put my hand on the Bible, took the oath, sat down. "Mr. Dawson, tell the court about your relationship with your son." I looked at the judge, nodded Derek. "Your Honor, my wife Ruth made me promise on her deathbed to keep our family together. I spent 9 years trying to honor that promise. I called every week. I sent gifts I couldn't afford. I drove 5 hours just to stand on a doorstep and be told my son wasn't home when his truck was in the driveway. My voice stayed even. I wasn't invited to my grandson's baptism. I wasn't told when my granddaughter was born. I've never heard Sophie's voice. I don't know what Ethan looks like now." I took a breath. Then after 9 years of nothing, they called because they needed $300,000. Not because they missed me. Because they found out I had money. I looked at Derek for the first time. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I didn't abandon my family. They abandoned me. And when they came back, it wasn't for a father. It was for a checkbook. The courtroom was silent. Judge Mitchell removed her glasses. "I've heard enough." She looked directly at Derek and Victoria. "What I see here is not a case of parental abandonment. It is a case of adult children who voluntarily severed contact with their father for nearly a decade, then attempted to coerce him into a financial transaction using access to his grandchildren as leverage." Her voice sharpened, There is no oral contract. There is no abandonment. There is a pattern of neglect followed by opportunism, and this court will not reward it. She lifted her gavel. The petition is dismissed with prejudice. I am also issuing a protective order. Any further attempts to contact, surveil, or financially pressure Mr. Dawson will result in contempt charges. This case is closed. The gavel struck once. Final. Patricia touched my arm. It's done. I stood. My legs were solid, stronger than they'd been in years. We walked out together. Behind us, Derek sat motionless at the plaintiff's table. Victoria stared at her hands. In the hallway, footsteps behind me. Dad! I turned. Derek stood 10 feet away. The courtroom polish was gone. His tie was loosened. His eyes were red. Dad, please. I know I messed up. Just give me a chance to make it right. I studied him. Not the boy he was. The man he'd become. Derek, I spent 9 years giving you chances. You used every one of them to remind me I wasn't worth your time. I paused. I forgive you. But I'm done. What does that mean? It means I hope you raise Ethan and Sophie better than you treated me. It means I wish you well. And it means I'm going home. He didn't follow me out. Patricia shook my hand on the courthouse steps. You did the right thing, Thomas. I know. I flew back to Beaufort that evening. 5 months later, a package arrived. Small, no return name, but I recognized the handwriting. Derek's. Inside was a letter and a photograph. The photo was old Ruth and me at our 20th anniversary dinner. She wore the pearl necklace. I wore a tie she'd picked out. We were laughing at something I couldn't remember anymore. The letter read, Dad, I've been seeing someone, a therapist. Victoria and I separated 2 months ago. I don't expect you to care about that, but I want you to know why. She told me once that your side of the family was a liability, and I believed her. For 9 years, I chose her world over yours. I chose wrong. Mom would be ashamed of me. I'm ashamed of me. I'm not asking you to come back. I just want you to know I finally see what I did. I'm sorry. I found this photo in a box Victoria was throwing away. I thought you should have it. I read it sitting on my screened porch. The azaleas were blooming. A heron stood motionless in the marsh, patient as stone. I cried. Not for long. Just enough to let something out that had been sealed shut for a decade. Then I dried my face, put the letter and photo in a wooden box on my dresser beside Ruth's watch, and closed the lid. I didn't write back. Not out of cruelty, out of peace. Some fractures don't mend. They just stop hurting. Ray came by that evening with a 6-pack and a bag of boiled peanuts. Saw something in my face. You all right, Tom? Yeah, I think I actually am. We sat on the porch watching the sky turn orange over the river. Didn't need to say much. That was the thing about Ray. He understood that sometimes being present was enough. A year has passed since then. I'm 72 now. I wake up every morning to the sound of birds instead of silence. I drink my coffee on the porch. I fix things for people who say thank you. I eat dinner with friends who invite me because they want to, not because they need something. Thursday nights with Ray. Saturday mornings at the farmer's market. Sunday volunteer shift at the animal shelter, where a 3-legged beagle named Chester follows me everywhere and howls when I leave. I think about Ruth. Every day, I think about the promise I made her. And I've decided I kept it. Not the way she imagined, maybe. But I took care of our family the only way I could by finally taking care of myself. If you're listening to this and you recognize your own life and mine, the unanswered calls, the closed doors, the feeling of being invisible to the people you raised, I want to tell you something. You are not the problem. You never were. You cannot love someone into loving you back. You cannot buy your way into a family that's decided you don't belong. And you don't have to keep bleeding for people who won't hand you a bandage. Walk away. Not in anger, in dignity. Find your Beaufort. Find your Ray. Find your screened porch and your 3-legged dog. Build a life where people know your name and mean it when they say good morning. You deserve that. We all do. If this story meant something to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below, tell me your story. You're not alone in this. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button. More stories are coming. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here.